Daf Ayin Gimel Amud Beis, right at the top of the Yomid. So the Tana in the Mishnah said that Avos Meloches are Aboim Chol Sarachas. Minyan Olamali, why does the Tana have to tell us the number? We can count. Why does he have to specify and tell us that there are 39? To tell you that if you did all of these always in one act of forgetfulness without realizing in the interim between each malacha, then he's chayav 39 chatos. So the Mishnah said, so the way it lists it in the order, the chronological order, it says Zayreya, that he plants and then he plows. Now, if we're giving the order of the way a person would plant and harvest and do all what's necessary to make bread, well, in the Avodas HaKarka, the first thing that you do is plow, not plant. So, the Gemara, the first thing that you do is normally you plow, and then you plant. So why doesn't it do it in the chronological order? First do Chayresh and then Zereyah. More answers Tana Be'eretz Yisrael. The Tana of the Mishnah was in Eretz Yisrael, and in Eretz Yisrael the Zora Bereisha V'Hada Karbi. In Eretz Yisrael, first they plant and then they plow. I mean, the ground is in Eretz Yisrael is very hard, and it won't be covered properly by the seeds. So the way some of the Rishonim learn it, they do an initial plowing, they plant the seeds, and then after that they do a plowing that will ensure that the seeds are covered with the earth, that the earth is turned over and covers the seed. Because otherwise, if they plowed first and then planted, since the ground is hard, it wouldn't be covered properly, the seed wouldn't be covered properly by the ground. So they do it in that order. So this is the normal order in Eretz Yisrael, that after planting they also plowed. So that's why the Tana, who's in Eretz Yisrael, gives it in that order. Tana, we learned in a Brisa, if a person plants and he sows seeds, and he's zaymer, he prunes. Pruning, there's excess branches, they cut them, and that stimulates the growth of the tree. If the tree has too many branches or older branches, some of the older branches are cut off, and that will help the tree grow better and stimulate growth. So if he does a zareh or zaymer, oineteya, it's planting a vine or a sapling, and he's mavrich and he's markiv, and he's mavrich or markiv, different types of grafting, where he's a mavrich, and in the case of mavrich, he bends over the branches into the ground and he plants it into the ground, then he cuts it off afterwards. He cuts it off from the main trunk. So it's a form of grafting. Or if he grafts, he takes one branch from one tree and he grafts it on and ties it on to another tree, and then it starts to grow from this second tree, from the trunk of the second tree. So in all these cases, kul malacha achas, and that's all considered one malacha. They're all forms of planting, whether it's planting seeds in the ground or whether it's planting saplings or grafting. All of these are different forms of planting, of sowing, of planting. It's one of malacha. My kamashlan, what's a chiddush? The Gemara says, "Al kamashlan ha'isam malachas harbe mein malacha achas ein achay velachas." It's teaching you that if you do many malachas, mein malachas, if this is all under the umbrella of planting. So there are variations, different forms of planting. It's telling you kula malacha achas. It's one, meaning if he does all of these things, behalam echad, he's only chayiv one, because they're from really it's one of malacha. He says, if a person grafts is neiteya, it's like planting a sapling. By taking the trees, cutting down the trees and pruning them, it's causing growth. So it's like planting a sapling. And if he does neiteya, our plant saplings or grafting, he's chayiv mishum zereya. He's chayiv mishum zereya of sowing seeds. More mishum zereya in mishum neteya loy. What is only zereya? It's not neteya. It's more similar to being neteya. It's more similar to plant a sapling. Ema af mishum zereya. He says all of this is also mishum zereya, meaning the point he wants to make over here is that you'll be chayav. It's only one, as we said before. Now, even if he does the things with zereya, they're not going to be chayav separately for zereya and neteya and mavrich and markiv, because they're all under the heading of planting. So it's all considered one of melacha, and behelamechad he'll only be chayav one. Omer of Kana zaymer v'tzarach la'etzim. If a person is zaymer, he prunes and he needs the wood. He wants the wood. So now he's cutting down the branches. So like we said, that's considered to be neteya. That's causing growth. But if he wants the branches as well, now he's cutting down branches. Cutting down branches, if he wants them for firewood, if he wants the branches, that's kaitzer. So then he says, he's chayiv shtaim, he's chayiv v'tu chatos. Ach mishum kaitzer, v'ach mishum neteya. He's chayiv two chatos, one for kaitzer, one neteya. Just like if he would cut down branches from a tree because he wants firewood, that's kaitzer. So here he's doing one act, but if in the same act, the intent is to stimulate the growth and to use the wood, to harvest the wood, to cut it down for firewood, he's chayiv too. He's chayiv for neteya and kaitzer with that same act. There's a machlokes rishonim if a person has to have the intent for firewood. He says, zaymer v'tzorach le'etzim, does he have to have a specific intent for the firewood or not? Or do we say that if he doesn't have intent for the firewood, then he's not chayav for it, he's only chayav for neteya, but he's not chayav for kaitzer. Now Tosfos over here says that he has to have intent for the firewood. And he says, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa, he's chayav. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to have a specific intent. And certainly according to Rav Shimon, who says malacha she'eina tzricha legufa, if he doesn't have intent for the firewood, you can't be mechayiv him for a kaitzer for the firewood, because it's not doing it, he's not cutting it down for this particular constructive purpose. But Tosfos says that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says malacha she'eina tzricha legufa is chayav, but not in this case, because he says that we cannot define this act as being kaitzer unless there's a specific intent. For instance, in the case of a person who's mitzi, he's mitzi a mess from a house, and if he doesn't need he only wants to remove the mess from the house, he really doesn't need it in this other place. Or as we'll see shortly, the Gemara will discuss a case of a person, he's a chayfer bor, he digs a ditch, and he does not need the earth. Or rather, he only wants the earth and he doesn't want the hole. Well, in both of those cases, that he is clearly doing a malacha. He's digging a ditch and he's doing hoitzah. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if it's not for the defined purpose, malacha she'eina tzricha legufa is chayav. But Tosfos says in this case, he's pruning, he's zaymer. If he does not have an intent for the eitzim, it's not even called kaitzer. It can't be called kaitzer unless he has the intent. Even if you say malacha she'eina tzricha legufa is chayav, there if he's clearly doing the malacha, even if it's not for the defined purpose, but he's doing the malacha. Tosfos says if he's zaymer and he doesn't need the eitzim, you cannot call it kaitzer. It cannot be defined as kaitzer. Similarly, that if we say that a person's certain other malachas, that he has to be seiser almanas livnais. It has to be almanas livnais. Otherwise, it's not considered a malacha. Or if he's moichek, he has to be moichek only moichek almanas lichtay. Then otherwise, it's not considered b'chlal the malacha. You can't consider it the malacha unless if he's moichek. Then if he's not moichek almanas, if he's not erasing almanas to write, it's not defined as the erasing that we're talking about in the Mishkan. Or if he's ripping the garment, he's kaireya shaloyam anas litfor. If it's not for the purpose of sewing, then it's not considered to be kaireya. Here also, if he's zomer, if he doesn't have intent for the eitzim, we cannot define it as being zomer, as being kaitzer at all. Rashi and Beya seems to argue with that and says it's not necessary to have the specific intent. As long as it's usable for firewood, then he is now harvesting firewood. So that seems to be machlokes rishonim. Let's see right in the Gemara. Amar Yosef Haiman the kotal asfas. If a person cuts down, he harvests asfas. It's the grains that were plants that were used for animal fodder to feed to the animals. So in the same way as we just said before, by Zaymer, he is stimulating growth, and now he's harvested this animal fodder. Rabbi Haiman, the Kaniv Silka, he cuts beets, achas mishum kaitzer, achas mishum zayreya. So in the same way, it also is the same way. Then if he's cutting the beets that are growing from the ground, cutting them won't stimulate the growth. So he's chayiv mishum zayreya. And he's chayiv also for harvesting, because he's being kaitzer, he's harvesting the beets. V'ha'chayresh, plowing. Tana, we learned in a brisa, chayresh v'ha'chayfer v'ha'chayresh. If a person plows, or he digs a hole, or he makes a furrow, in all of these cases, kula malacha achasen. So they're all considered one malacha. It's all part and parcel of being chayresh, and therefore, if he does all these three, behalam echad, he's only going to be chayiv one chatas. Amar Rav Sheshes says, if a person, there was a small mound of earth, and he removed it, so if it's in the house, there was an earthen floor. In those days, most of the floors were earthen floors. If it's in a house, and he removed this mound from the floor, so now he's leveling off the floor of the house. Leveling off the floor of the house is considered baina. In a field, he's leveling the field, and that's chayresh. Now, meaning chayresh, plowing, is not only in the literal sense where he's plowing, he's making furrows in a field. Chayresh is he's changing the field, he's doing something to the earth to make it more suitable for planting. Now, if there's a mound in the field, if he levels it, that also is now he's making the field suitable for planting. He's doing something to the earth which makes it now more suitable for planting, so removing that mound in a field is also chayresh. Amar Rava, similar but in the opposite way. Hoisla guma v'tamama. If there was a hole and he filled up the hole, Babai is chay mishum baina. So again, he's leveling the floor. So in a house, be chay mishum baina. In a sada, mishum chayrish, in a field, it'll be chayrish because he's leveling it, so it doesn't matter if there's a mound, he removes it, a hole, and he fills it up, it's the same. Amar Rabbi Abba, so this is what we discussed before, the machlokes hamalocha she'eina tzricha legufa. If there was a chayfer guma b'Shabbos, if a person digs a hole in the floor of his house on Shabbos, and he's only doing it for the earth. He doesn't want the hole per se. He wants to take the earth. He doesn't really want the hole. Potter lay, he's potter. He's potter for it. Why should he be potter? Now, if you tell me that a malacha she'eina tzricha legufa is potter, like Rav Shimon says, well, it's not for the defined purpose of the malacha, and it's not for the constructive purpose of the malacha. Here he's digging a hole. He's digging a hole in the house. Now, the malacha of baina, the malacha of chayfer in a house would be baina. That's if he is now constructing the house. And he's making the house more usable. And he's leveling the floor. So over here, he's chayfer guma b'Shabbos, and he only needs the ofar. So we can't consider this to be boina. because this is not, now, certainly according to Rav Shimon, who says, Malach Shein Tzriich Leguf is potter, you'll be potter. But even according to Rav Yehuda, who says, Malach Shein Tzriich Leguf is chayev, well, Rav Yehuda says it does not have to be for the defined purpose of the malacha, and even though it's not for the defined purpose of the malacha, and even though he's not constructing anything in the house, but he is making a hole, and he is now digging a hole, and even though his purpose is only for the earth, but why shouldn't it be chayiv? Gemara says no, he's bought. Va'afil Rabbi Yehuda, and even according to Rabbi Yehuda, normally says you're chayiv hani mil masaket. That would be if he's doing malach shein tzriich legufa, where he's masakin something, where he's now, it has to be not ruining something, not destroying something. There's some sort of constructive purpose. But hi makalkalu. But over here, he's ruining the house. Now, even though Rabbi Yehuda says that you don't need, it does not have to be for the defined purpose, and even if it's not even for a constructive purpose per se, meaning like he's moving a mess from the house because he doesn't want it in the house, not because he wants to be mitzi it, not because he wants it in the Rishus HaRabim per se, so he's not doing it for the defined purpose of Haitzah, and he's not even doing it for a constructive purpose because he's only removing a negative. It's not like he wants to construct something or has a constructive purpose to have it in the Rishus HaRabim. He doesn't even want it in the Rishus HaRabim per se. He just wants to remove a negative, to remove it from his house. But there's no kilkel over there. Over there, there's no kilkel. Over here, he's ruining the house. Now, in all Malachas Shabbos, if a person is makalkel, if he's destroying, then he's potter. Makalkel is potter. So the next malacha in the Mishnah is kaitzer is harvesting. Tana kaitzer v'haboitzer v'agoyder. Whether he is cutting down grain, or he's harvesting, picking grapes, or he's goyder, or whether he's harvesting dates. In all of these cases, or either he's meitzig for oire, or whether it's picking olives or figs. Kula malacha achas, all of these are one malacha, it's all harvesting. If he does all of these, he's only chayav one. If a person takes a clump of earth and he throws it on a date tree, and the dates fall off, says chayav two. Now by doing this, he's now, in effect, picking the dates. The dates have now been detached from the tree. They've been severed from the tree. So that's kaitzer. Now he says, in addition, it's mefarek. It's mefarek, you have a cluster of the dates. Now, a date or some of the dates are removed from the cluster. It's like mefarek, where you're removing the grain from the husk. You're removing it just like that's mefarek, you're removing something which is a told of dash, of threshing, just by like threshing, where you're removing a grain from the husk, you're removing a date from the cluster. So he says, in this one act of throwing the clump of earth on the tree, you'll be chayiv too. But Rav Ashi Omer, he says, no, ein derech tlisha b'kach, ve'ein derech prika b'kach. He says, not only are you not chayiv two, you're not even chayiv one, because it's shalei kederach, it's kalachar yad. You're only chayiv from a locha if it's done in the normal way. This is done in an unusual way, so he says you're potem. V'ma'amer, gathering together. So in the next malacha is when you have the harvested grain on the field, you gather it together. Amarava, Haimanda, kind of milchami milchosa. If a person gathers salt from the salt ditches, they used to have ditches where the water from the sea used to flow in, and then they closed it up, and it dried up in the sun, and after the water evaporated, they had salt, and they gathered it up over there. So he says, one who gathers that salt from the salt ditches, that's also gathering, like Ma'amer gathering the sheaves of the wheat. This is also considered Ma'amer. However, Abai argues, he says, no, Abai Omer, ein imur al b'gedulei karka. The imur has to be Ma'amer, similar to what it is by the grains, which is something growing from the ground. It's only by gedulei karka and not in the case of the salt. V'adash, threshing, tana, adash, if a person threshes, or he's menapetz, he takes the flax and he beats the flax. So by the flax, he removes the flax from the stalks. So that's what we mean menapetz in this sense. We don't mean it in the sense of when the Mishnah mentions it in regards to the wool, untangling the wool. In this sense, we're talking about that he's beating the flax, or he's menaped, he does a similar item with cotton. Kul melocha chasen. This is all one melocha. It's all part and parcel of dash. It's removing, just like by threshing, you're removing the grains from the husks. In all of these, because it doesn't matter if it's flax or cotton, you're removing the flax or the cotton from the stalks or the husks.